Welcome to the Ad Nauseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, listeners, to episode 61 of the Ad Nauseam podcast. My name is Dr. Jeffrey T. Winkle. I'm here late night in the Vomitorium, as always, with my good friend and co-host, Dr. David C. Noe. How you doing tonight, Doctor?
I'm doing well, Jeff. Thank you for that rousing intro.
Yeah. You feeling all right? You look a little disgruntled across the table.
No,
there.
I'm completely gruntled.
Completely gruntled?
Yes.
Excellent.
I take the eye out of irascible, as we say. I poke the eye out of irascible.
So you're irascible?
I'm irascible.
Irascible tonight? I'm feeling excited tonight.
I was going to ask, Jeff,
Yeah.
how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good, right?
It's a feelings-based culture, isn't it?
It is.
So we really have to ask how each other are feeling. Oh, how are you feeling? How are you feeling?
Because it's all about the feelings.
It is.
That's right. Well, I've got some good feels
Let's hear
tonight. Yeah, I'm excited about we're revisiting Ovid after our short break away from Ovid. Got some good stories on tap. Excited. There's a lot of petrification going on tonight.
Okay.
More metamorphosizing, as they say. I'm looking forward to this.
I am too.
Yep.
I love Ovid. I can relate. I love the brilliance of his diction, the vivacity of his imagination, the way he selects abstract nouns and strings them together.
I'm drawn to the way that he kind of teases you in. He invites you to kind of compare these stories to each other. And I found, like, when I was looking at our two stories tonight, and I think, okay, I've got the connections. But as soon as you think you got them pinned down, there's something else that throws you off the trail.
That's right. He pulls the couch right from underneath you.
Yeah, every single time. So, but we're getting ahead of things.
Right.
We have, as always, a shout out tonight.
We do. We're going international for the second week in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this goes to a man named Ron Chalice. And Ron says, I majored in Latin, Greek, and ancient history in my BA and MA at Macquarie University here in Sydney, Australia. I'm probably mispronouncing Macquarie.
That's how I would do it.
Okay, so we're both wrong.
Ron can correct us.
Ron says, as an undergraduate, I threw myself into the ancient world and was captivated by Greece and Rome. I like this guy already, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Throwing himself into things.
Yes.
But Egypt did not do it for me. Now, Ron, you got to run down Egypt?
Yeah, I don't think that was necessary. Why did you throw that
Gratuitous.
in there?
And then what? We had to read it on the air?
We had no choice.
It's too late.
Right.
He says, I taught in public high schools, then joined the classics department at Ascham School. Did I get that right?
I think that's right.
Okay. I then had a career change and headed learning and development for the Australian Federal Police in Sydney. Wow.
That is a change.
That's not only a change, that's a huge amount of responsibility.
No doubt.
Just think about all the boomerangs flying around down there. He's got to police all of them.
All of them. Exactly right. Is that what you think of when you think of Australia? I think
No.
the kangaroos and boomerangs.
I think of Ayers Rock.
Ayers Rock. Right.
Yeah, I think of the Sydney Opera House. So picturesque.
Yes.
And I think of a massive continent, which I understand is mostly empty.
Yes. The great outback. Yeah.
I think of Captain James Cook, or is it Captain Crunch?
New Zealand, Captain Crunch.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I also think about beer, right?
Foster's.
Right.
Right.
I think of beer.
Beer.
That's right.
Yeah.
But to get back to
Ron,
you want to read the next part here?
Yeah, so he says that after that gig, the classroom again beckoned. He started teaching Latin at Regent's Park Christian School, stemming from a plea from the head of secondary,
Who was that?
his wife,
Good one, Ron.
that the school needed a better way to improve how English is understood.
Oh, don't we all?
So, like Odysseus, he's comparing himself to Odysseus.
Oh, come on.
I like this guy.
I do too.
Yeah.
He threw himself into the Odyssey. Good job, Ron.
So, like Odysseus, he says he has returned and started a new phase in language learning in his own little kingdom.
All right.
Yes.
Ithaca, just outside of Sydney.
Right. He also threw some Australian Aboriginal slang.
Yes, he did. I love this. A brand new word for me. And I have a good friend who lives down in Australia, in Melbourne. She got her shout out some months ago. But Janet knows who she is. And he says, teaching remotely is hard yakka.
Yaka.
Yaka.
And what is yaka?
Well, I looked it up. It means physically draining work. It comes from a word yaga, meaning work, in the Yagara language of the Brisbane area.
So yaga comes from the Yagaran people?
Yeah, the Yagaran people.
Hard-working people.
They are,
Yeah.
right. It's hard yaka. You been down to the Brisbane area? You much of a Brisbaner?
I would love to go to Australia, but I've never been.
I haven't either.
It's about as far away on the planet from here as you can nearly get.
It's antipodal, right?
It is antipodal.
You ever dig through your backyard and pop up outside of Melbourne?
That was the plan as a kid. Once I think I made it about 3 feet, and I got bored.
Oh, that digging is, let me tell you, hard yakka.
That is hard yakka. Well, thanks, Ron, for your interest and your good humor, and keep up the great work down there.
Yeah, keeping the flame alive, teaching languages, classics down there. We're so grateful.
Yes. All right, I'm going to take the opening quote tonight.
Well, if you insist.
I insist. This comes from Alan Griffin writing broadly on Ovid's Metamorphoses back in the late 70s.
Okay.
Yes. And he writes, the amount of Ovid's surviving poetry is almost exactly equal to the sum total of poetry which has come down to us from Lucretius, Catullus, Virgil, Horace, Tibullus, and Propertius. That stat kind of surprised me. It's just the huge amount of Ovidian poetry that we have.
Yes, I'm surprised because of Virgil. I know Catullus has a very small collection of poems, and Tibullus and Propertius, not especially prolific, but
if you're lumping Horace and Virgil together?
Yeah, Horace churned out a lot.
He did,
and Virgil, 12 books of the Aeneid and
Georgics.
Yeah, and the Eclogues. But yeah, Ovid was prolific.
Yep. He goes on, Ovid wrote because he was a compulsive writer, a poet utterly in love with poetry, as Gilbert Murray aptly put it. He was the only classical poet to leave an autobiography, and in it he records that as a boy, I tried to write words freed from rhythm, yet all unbidden song would come upon befitting numbers, and whatever I tried to write was verse. So he couldn't help it. He was constantly scatting and bebopping all over the place.
Right.
Yeah.
He's like a rapper.
Yes.
If I may say, a very elevated one, obviously.
Yeah.
But he just cannot speak without rhyme.
Right. The quantity of Ovid's poetry, of course, cannot be made an excuse for lack of quality, but no indulgence need be begged, and no allowances made for his masterpiece, the Metamorphoses.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking for a quote that was kind of more specific to our stories.
The two vignettes.
The two vignettes today. And I couldn't find anything that kind of leapt out at me or would be interesting for our audience. But I thought this was a kind of a grandiose passage, kind of setting up the elevation of this particular work of Ovid.
Yeah, searched thee in vain. So Gilbert Murray, who is quoted here by Alan Griffin, is one of my two favorite Gilberts of the 20th century.
Can I guess the other Gilbert?
Yes.
Is it Gilbert Gottfried?
No.
No?
No, it's Gilbert Hyatt.
Oh, Gilbert Hyatt. Okay.
Gilbert Murray and Gilbert Hyatt, two great Gilberts.
Gotcha.
We should do an episode on great Gilberts of the 20th century.
Paul Gilbert?
Maybe, but he's not a classicist.
No, he's not.
And he's still alive, so we got to include him in the 21st century.
Gotcha. Yes.
But he says, Gilbert Murray aptly put it, that Ovid was a poet utterly in love with poetry. Now, he's cribbing a little bit on Quintilian. Remember that Quintilian quote we used in an episode past?
Wait, you got to remind me. This is so long ago.
I don't remember the name of it, but Ovid, according to Quintilian, was too in love with his own genius.
Too in love with his own genius.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's entirely appropriate.
Right. And that's a criticism on Quintilian's part.
Yes,
right?
I think so.
He was kind of brought low by his own.
Correct.
Yes.
Too much talent, too much technical ability.
Right.
The kind of person who isn't able to innovate in any one genre because they have so much technical ability in all of them.
Yes. Right. Should we get to it?
Let's get to it.
Okay. Where are we starting? What are we doing today, Dave?
We're going to offer the listener, dear listener, we're going to offer you a look at two different episodes from Ovid's Metamorphoses, two vignettes or sketches. The first one comes to us from Book 4, and it's a story of transformation, petrification.
Yes.
Sexifying? I don't know. During which the character Perseus has an encounter with shaggy old Atlas and the Titan, and it turns him into stone.
Yes.
There's a spoiler alert. And then we're going to go on to Book 6, to one that I believe you chose.
Yes, the tragedy of Niobe and her children, which also ends with a petrification. Right. So there's at least one major theme kind of linking these stories together.
Is turned to stone.
Turned to stone.
Okay, so as we get into the story of Perseus and Atlas, that's where we're headed, we have to have a gentle on-ramp, you might say.
Okay.
And the on-ramp here is actually Cadmus and Harmonia.
All right.
So Cadmus was turned into a snake, as was his wife Harmonia, who herself was the daughter, if I'm not mistaken, of Ares and Aphrodite.
Yes, that is correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ed McMahon.
You are correct, sir.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. So the story picks up, and Perseus has just removed the head of Medusa. So this is book 4, and we're going to read a little bit from the Lombardo translation, then look at a little Latin, hexameter from Ovid himself, and then back to the Atlas story.
Okay, I got to ask you a question before we start, though. So you said the story picks up right after the beheading of Medusa. Now, maybe some of our listeners are saying, why would you gloss over that incredible, famous, wonderful story and instead choose this other adventure of Perseus? So when you were thinking about this episode, why did you say, that would be a good one?
Ovid does this all the time.
Okay.
He does this all the time. For example, I think it is partly explained by the anxiety of influence. Later on in the book, I do not remember in the epic, I do not remember the book, but I'm going to say it's 13 off the top of my head. The fall of Troy is recorded.
Okay.
And instead of recounting the fall of Troy, as Virgil does in Book 2 of the Aeneid, the fall of Troy is confined to a single line in Ovid's Metamorphoses. The most famous story of all of mythology is just a single line, and he says words to this effect: "And so Troy fell, and with it Priam's house."
And that's it.
That's it. And you know that Ovid's doing that deliberately.
Just to irritate people?
Yes, and also to say, I don't need to do what other people have done. I'm not going to compete on their terms.
Right. Exactly. So this is him being, again, slippery and unpredictable.
Right.
Once again.
And there's a certain brilliance in it.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before, but if you want to be great in a particular category, you master the technical form of that category, that skill, and that art, and then you have to introduce some subtle innovation.
Right.
But you have to prove, first of all, that you can meet other people's expectations, I would say, before you innovate.
Right.
And then it seems shocking and interesting.
Right. But then I think you also run the risk, once you start branching out, of alienating people. And I mean, we know that Ovid alienated some people at the very, very top.
Definitely.
But it would be wonderful to know kind of how this stuff played to an audience that went to the concert to hear the greatest hits.
Right.
And he does one verse from one line and says, let me show you something else.
Yes.
Right.
Well, we know that his love poetry was extraordinarily successful even in his own lifetime.
Okay.
As for the Metamorphoses, I know it was very, very successful later on. I'm not sure about its reception in his own lifetime.
His own day.
So Lombardo says, the other, that is Perseus, was soaring through thin air on whistling wings, bearing the snake-haired monster's memorable spoils. As the victor hovered over the Libyan desert, bloody drops from the Gorgon's head fell down and were received by Earth, who reanimated them as various species of snakes. And this is why the land there swarms with poisonous vipers.
So a little etiology there.
Exactly.
Yes.
You remember when Cato was slugging through the desert? Cato Eutychensis?
Yes.
The guy who killed himself?
Right.
46, I think, during the Civil Wars. Well, Lucan describes all of the snakes that attacked the army of Cato. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Because North Africa was famous for its poisonous vipers.
Here's your mythical origin story.
That's right. This is where it came from.
Yep.
Brain coral as well. That's where it came from, too. It's from the drops of blood falling into the ocean.
Oh, okay.
From Medusa's head.
Nice.
So, and were received by Earth, who reanimated them, etc. From there, he, Perseus, was driven by conflicting winds, like a rain cloud through vast regions of air. So what do we have there? Epic simile. Just one line. He flew over the whole world, looking down from dizzying heights on distant lands. 3 times he saw the cold stars of the bears, and thrice the crab's claws. What is Ovid doing here, Dr. Winkle?
Well, he's giving us a nice little tour of the universe.
Yes.
Right. I feel like you're fishing for something more specific than that.
Well, he's showing off his erudition.
Right? How much he knows.
Cosmology.
Right, okay.
Let me describe the different constellations as only a poet can do.
He does this also in the Daedalus and Icarus episode where they're flying, and he flies past this island and that island, and if you look off to your left, it's like a pilot.
Exactly.
There's Samos down there. Right. Yeah.
He was blown more than once beyond the western horizon and into the east, and now as the day faded, wary of the night, he put down in the farthest reaches of the west, in Atlas's kingdom, hoping to catch a few hours' sleep before the morning star summoned Aurora, and Aurora in turn the chariot of day.
Now Perseus can do this because he's borrowed, is it the hat or the sandal from Hermes?
He has both. He has a number of gifts from the gods. So he's got the curved scimitar, right, which is the ideal device for severing Gorgon heads.
Yes.
He's got the shiny shield from Athena, right?
So you can see the reflection of the Gorgon, which will not harm you.
Exactly. He has the talaria, the winged sandals, loaned to him by Hermes, like that famous episode in the first Iron Man movie, the origin story.
Yes.
Where, who is it? Lex Luthor, Peter Parker. What's the name of that guy?
Which guy are you talking about? Iron Man?
Iron Man. Tony
come on.
Stark.
Tony Stark. Thank you. Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr.
Yep.
He's in the basement of his garage, or the garage of his basement. I don't know. And he's trying out these thrusters, which will allow his feet to.
He's kind of like hovering there in midair.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what Perseus is trying to learn how to do.
Gotcha.
But he's going all over the universe in the process of learning this unique skill.
Interesting. Okay. So what next?
Well, Atlas is hunkered down here in the far west, and we're going to get another major etiology.
Okay.
What is an etiology?
Etiology
Dr.
is
Winkle?
a story that kind of explains.
Dropping big words here.
Yeah, it's origin stories. You know, very often why something in nature is the way it is. Here's the story behind it.
A just so story.
A just so story.
How
Right?
the leopard got his spots.
Exactly.
All right, so it's an etiology. How the Atlas Mountains got there.
Right. Please go ahead.
The modern day Atlas Mountains, if I'm not mistaken, Nifalur, throw a little Latin in there.
Nice.
Okay, are located in Tunisia,
Yes.
Algeria,
Yes.
and a little bit of Morocco.
What does he have to do with this? Morocco, please.
Sorry.
Please. Now you're kind of like Ovid here, kind of showing off a little geographical knowledge, right?
I'm not supposed to know the names of the countries in supra-Saharan Africa.
Well, you said like, well, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I knew I wasn't mistaken.
Okay, all right.
But we talked about this a little bit off air, remember?
What did we say?
I said that you could talk about your time in Tatooine.
Yes.
And I speculated that the Atlas Mountains were in Mauritania.
Oh, I see. Yes.
And then you came down hard on me when you said, no, it's not Mauritania.
Right.
It's Morocco.
Sorry, I was.
Who is he anyway?
He's a guy that pops up on like, best of the '80s videos.
He's kind of a DJ kind of a guy.
I don't know. He's a DJ. He's a TV personality.
They call him a personality.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
So you went to Tatooine.
I did. It was amazing. Do we have time for a little?
Of course.
All right. So one of the highlights of
your life,
of my life, sort of my travel life.
Okay.
Is one morning they told us that if you want to get up before.
Wait a minute. Who's they? You haven't said any location. You just woke up and they told you if you want to see Tatooine.
Exactly. It was some kind of Eastern European prison. Right? No, I was part of an academic group there in Tunisia.
Now we've got some context
that we're studying Roman ruins.
Okay.
Which are all over the place in Tunisia.
All right.
And some incredible sites there. Well, we were in the southern part of Tunisia, kind of the edge of the Sahara Desert. And our guides told us that as an optional outing in the morning, if you want to get up at 4 a.m, and we're getting some.
I'm out.
For probably 75% of a group, they were out.
Okay,
that's all they needed to hear.
Right.
But if you wanted to, you get up early. We're going to get in some dune buggies, and we're going to drive, through the dunes of the Sahara, and
He's pantomiming, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, exactly. Waving my arms, and to see the sunrise come up over the dunes.
Aurora.
Right. And so they said we had to go super early because it gets really hot really fast, so we had to get in, get out. And so I said, I don't want to miss this. And
right.
So I got up at 4 with a handful of us, and we got in these things. We drove all up and down, saw the sunrise. It was incredible. It was beautiful. And they said, we have an extra surprise. And this is where I thought, they're going to abandon us in the desert. Nobody will hear from us again. But they took us over.
Here's half a camel and a full skin of water.
Exactly right.
Find your way out.
Right. They took us over this ridge and down into this valley. And there we found ourselves amongst the decrepit ruins of the set of Star Wars.
So the John Williams music cued?
Yes.
And Mos Eisley opened up before you?
Yes. Now, unfortunately, this was not the set from the 1977 Star Wars. It was the one from probably the worst one of all, The Phantom Menace.
We're not going to mention that one.
Right. But there they all were. This paper mache and chicken wire sets that they just built and abandoned.
And since this happened long ago and far, far away, this is the very set over which Perseus flew.
Yes.
To get back to classical themes.
Yes.
On his way west to the Atlas Mountains.
Exactly.
Which presently cover 3 different countries. Right. And you were in one of those.
I was
Tunisia.
In one. Tunisia, yes.
All right. So Atlas lives there, and it's time to read some Latin.
Please do. You're going to take it away, right?
I'm going to take it away right here. So this is line 621, book 4 of the Metamorphoses. Inde per inmen sum ventis discordibus actus, nunc huc nunc illuc exemplo nubis aquosae, feret et ex alto se ductas aethera longe, de spectater rasto tumque super volat orbem.
Very nice.
I'm not done yet.
Oh, keep going.
Ter geledas arctos ter cancri brachio vidit, Saipasubacassus saipest ablatus in ortus, jam quacadente die virtus se credere nocti, constitit Hesperior regnisar Atlantis in orbe. We're getting to the good part here. Exiguam capetit requiem dum lucifer ignes, evo ket aurdrodra curdrus aurdrodra de urnos. He comenum cunctos ingenti corpora praestans, and now the big line, ja petionides atlas fuit ultima tellus.
Very nicely done.
Thanks.
Now, why is that the big line?
Because we have here Atlas. It was Atlas. And we have his patronymic, which is not easy to get into a line of hexameter. It is 6 syllables, ja petionides.
Yeah, it's a short line because so much is crammed into that patronymic.
Yes, there are only 5 words in the entire line.
Yeah.
Ja petionides atlas fuit ultima tellus. So that one word covers 2.5 feet.
Yeah, that's nice. And it's like he has all these wonderful lines. I mean, where this is that tour of the cosmos that's giving us that.
Yes, but concrete brachia, the arms of Cancer.
But and then he drops this.
You're right.
He drops it at the end. It was Atlas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You could say, I do not think it would be a stretch. He drops it like a rock. Really, right there. It's heavy.
It's heavy, yeah.
I hope the listener, even without a knowledge of Latin, which may be a lot or maybe all, I don't know, not all, but much of our audience, I take it, doesn't know Latin real well. Mm-hmm. You can hear the rapidity, right? How fast and free and loose are his verses. Just so skillful. And then this really heavy one.
I love that second line you read, the nunk hook nunk iluk.
Yes, the internal rhyme.
Yeah, exactly. It's
highly
great.
Staccato.
Very staccato, yeah. But which is fitting for a character that's moving all over the place. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In musical terms, they call this phrasing, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. The scansion in the poetry is akin to musical phrasing.
So now that we've heard the Latin and we actually heard the translation before it, right?
Right.
So now we're up to the spot where Atlas appears on the stage.
Yes. Shall I read a little bit of that?
Yes. Can you go on from that spot?
In Lombardo's translation, yes. So here Atlas, son of Iapetus, who for sheer bulk exceeded all men, ruled the edge of the world, and the sea that welcomes the sun's panting horses and his weary chariot. He had 1,000 flocks, and as many herds of cattle wandering grassy plains that stretched on without borders. And there was a tree whose golden leaves concealed golden branches and apples of gold.
That's a lot of gold, isn't it?
That is a lot of gold. Yeah. So wait, is he saying it's is it the sun who has the flocks here, or is Atlas has the flocks?
It's Atlas who has the flocks.
So, but he's holding up the world.
He's not yet.
This is before he gets that punishment.
Correct.
Okay. So this is where he's hanging out.
He's hanging out. He's a Titan, right?
Right.
So he and his brother Menoetius, in a previous generation, were part of the group that fought against Zeus in the Titanomachy.
Right, okay.
The Battle of the Gods and the Titans.
Okay.
They can go back to one of those Hesiod episodes if they want to learn about that.
Oh, that's very true.
Pretty early on.
Way back when.
Right.
Yep.
So Atlas is here tending his flocks. He has 1,000 flocks and herds of cattle, grassy plains, and so forth. And there's a garden there. Now, this is the garden of the Hesperides, you know? The furthest west point where these golden apples are kept.
Right. Probably most famously known, this is one of Heracles' labors.
That's right.
He has to get these apples.
And there's a snake there that guards it. I think the snake's name is Ladon. And at one point, Hercules has Atlas go get the apples for him.
Right.
Remember? And Hercules holds the world up in his stead.
Right. It gives him a breather.
Correct.
Go gets the apples. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Interesting. We have a tree with apples guarded by a snake. It sounds kind of familiar.
It does sound familiar. Yeah.
All right. You want to pick it up there? You want to read some more?
So here's Lombardo. My lord, Perseus said to him, the him being Atlas, the son of Iapetus, if high birth carries any weight with you, mine is from Jupiter. Or if you admire great deeds, you'll admire mine. I ask for hospitality and a place to rest. So what do we have here? The basic Xenia story, don't we?
We do. He's a weary traveler. Although he sells himself pretty well.
He does.
Like
2 points, right?
I said, you should know who my dad is.
Right.
And man, look what I've done.
So it's a business card and a resume.
Yep. Exactly. So he's not the weary beggar.
No.
He's highborn, but he still asks for and expects Xenia.
Mm-hmm. And where do things go from there?
Well, let me pick it up. But Atlas remembered an ancient prophecy given to him by Themis on Mount Parnassus. Atlas, a day will come when your tree will be stripped of all its gold, and a son of Jupiter will take the credit. Fearing this, Atlas had enclosed his orchard with massive walls and set a huge dragon to guard it, and he kept away all strangers from his borders. Now he said to Perseus, "Get out of here, or your supposed glory and that Jupiter of yours will be long gone."
Why the animosity towards Jupiter?
I don't know. Why is he so upset with Jupiter about
Because this is, the Titanomachy.
That's right. They were on opposite sides.
The Titans and the gods, they don't mix.
Right.
Isn't it interesting that professional sports teams, we have the New York Giants, we have the Tennessee Titans,
Yes.
but we don't have any team called the gods.
The gods or even the Olympians.
No, are there no Olympians?
Well, maybe in some kind of B league, but
I suppose.
yeah.
The Washington football team is looking for a mascot.
Right now they are the Washington football team.
Yes, the WFTs. They used to be the Redskins, remember?
That's right.
But they ditched that name, and they're looking for another name. So maybe this is a candidate?
Maybe.
The Washington Gods?
Maybe. Speaking of Titans, you don't know that the movie Clash of the Titans?
Which one?
Well, all of them.
Okay.
No Titans.
Really?
Let alone clashing.
Well, there were Titans in it.
Name a Titan that was in Clash of the Titans.
You got me.
You can't do it because there were none.
I think Perseus was in most of them.
He's not a Titan.
I know, but just remembering that he was in the movie.
He was in the movie, right? We're off track though. Okay, so he's upset. He heard this prophecy, and this is a
Classic Ovidian move, right?
And you find this all over myth too. Is it, you have prophecy, oracles given.
An anonymous kind of prophecy. You don't know where it came from.
Well, yeah,
somebody said something.
Somebody said something, and you didn't seek it out. It's just going to drop down you,
right?
And it's usually bad. And so you do everything that you can to avoid the outcome. But of course, the rule of oracles is an oracle must come true. Mm-hmm. So he's built these huge walls. He said, maybe if I build these giant walls, nobody will come and strip my golden trees.
Right.
And here's a snake to also keep people away.
Mm-hmm. But he hasn't reckoned with the quality of this particular customer.
That's right.
Perseus has a secret weapon.
He does. You want to read on?
Yes, I would. His heavy hands, Atlas's heavy hands, backed up the threat with force. Perseus interspersed gentle words into his heroic resistance. But finding himself outmanned, who could outman Atlas himself? He said to him, "Well now, since you are able to show me so little kindness, here's a little kindness for you."
Ooh, that's kind of a...
He's monologuing like a superhero.
It is like, he kind of reminds me almost like Spider-Man here.
Right.
Kind of scrawny, but kind of quick with his wit.
The clever retort. So what is it that he's going to pull out of his magic satchel?
What could it be? And turning away, he held out on his left the horrible head of the Gorgon Medusa. As big as he was, Atlas immediately turned into a mountain of just the same size. His hair and beard were changed into trees and into ridges his shoulders and his hands. What had been his head was now a summit, and his bones became stones. Then every part grew to an enormous size, for you gods wished it so, and the entire sky with all its many stars now rested upon him. So Perseus takes out the head of Medusa. He uses this, of course, later when he gets home.
Over.
Yeah, it almost gets a little old.
Right.
Right, exactly. Oh, here what's he going to whip out of the bag? Here it comes again. Right. But I kind of like this, yeah. Here, I got a little kindness for you. Here's some kindness.
Yeah.
Very sarcastic. Yeah.
So that's the etiology. That's the story.
Yeah.
That's how the sky is held up.
Now, is Atlas there? I take it to be that from a Roman or a Greek point of view, that's the edge of the world.
I think so.
The vast expanse of river ocean beyond that. And so we place Atlas at the very farthest geographical point that they know about.
Right. I think we maybe have talked about this before, but when I was a kid, we used to talk about Timbuktu. Which is a city in Africa.
Right.
And from my, parochial American upbringing in the 1970s and 1980s, Timbuktu was the proverbial edge of the world.
Right. Yeah, it functions as a kind of like the ultimate nowheresville, right?
You're not going to bring up liminality here, are you?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, but since you brought it up, no, forget it.
So my friend down in Australia, not Ron, but the other one, says they have an expression, back of Burke.
Back of Burke, what does that mean?
Burke is a spot in Australia that is remote, distant, and small, kind of a nowheresville.
Yeah.
And if you go back of Burke, you're really out.
You're
nowhere.
really way out of there.
Correct.
Right.
So for the Romans and the Greeks, the Atlas Mountains in Morocco
was the back of Burke.
Back of Burke.
Gotcha. I like that.
Mm-hmm. It's an Australian kind of themed day, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. This has been some hard yakka getting through these lines.
Speaking of hard yakka, it's time for a break.
Let's do it. This episode of Ad Nauseam brought to you by Hackett Publishing. The good people at Hackett have for the last 40 plus years been bringing affordable, accessible translations of classical works as well as works from all other corners of academia to the public. I love Hackett. I've used their translations in my classroom. I have them in my shelves in my house. Can't say enough about them. Dave, tell us what you like about Hackett Publishing.
Well, I like their commitment to the classics, for starters. They have a very broad and deep bench, you might say, of works, classical works that we can turn to, reliable, accurate, and very interesting translations. For preparing tonight's episode, we're looking at the translations of Ovid's Metamorphoses, two of them, one by our hero, Stanley Lombardo,
Yes.
with a nice introduction by W.R. Johnson, very well done. The cover has a modern artwork called They Snaked Together, which is Cadmus and Harmonia. It's by someone named Micheline Klagsbrunn. Captures so well the contents of the book. Now the other one, so this is a poetry, a verse translation. The other one by Ambrose is a prose translation.
Right.
And it has the famous picture of Zeus embracing one of his many loves in the shape of a cloud.
That's right.
So what does this tell us about Hackett? Well, they have not just one, but two excellent paperback, affordable, highly researched, careful translations on a major author.
Yep. I've used them for years. I always go back to them in my own research and in suggesting works that my students ask me about. So I can't say enough about Hackett Publishing.
Right. Let's face it, the classics are a little bit under some pressure now in contemporary culture. People are questioning the relevance. Is it appropriate to read these stories and such? Hackett is still putting out high quality stuff and supporting the classics like this podcast.
Yep, keeping the flame alive as we say a lot of this. So, listeners, to take advantage of our special offer here, go to hackettpublishing.com, search their catalog, find something you like, put it in your grocery basket, but don't forget to type in the code AN2021, and you will get 20% off plus free shipping.
Amazing. Check it out. This episode is also brought to you by Ratio Coffee. Ratio Coffee, the brainchild of our good friend and great supporter of the classics, Mr. Mark Helweg, based out in Portland, Oregon. Mark set out to design the perfect home coffee maker.
And I think he's done it.
I think for sure.
Yes, for the last 5 months or so, I've had a cup nearly every morning from my Ratio 6 machine, and I've never had better coffee in my household.
I used to have one of those machines made by, I don't know, what was it called? Dack and Blecker, maybe?
Yeah.
Dack and Blecker or Monsieur Coffee, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Plasticky sort of thing, and, you get what you pay for when it comes to a quality beverage.
The scorch pad.
Always
the scorch pad.
Emanating brackish tang all over the place.
Yeah, nasty.
And those days are long gone now.
Way gone, yep. So in the Ratio 6, you have the Ratio 8.
I do.
There's no hot pad. There's just a solid steel carafe that keeps the coffee warm for ages. After the bloom stage, you got the brew stage, then you got the ready stage.
All illuminated by this wonderful, charming LED light.
Yep. The machines themselves are beautiful to look at.
Extruded aluminum, aircraft quality.
Yes.
With real wood accents. Mine has got walnut, and it's an oyster color, matches the decor of the kitchen. The other appliances, cower in shame.
They do.
When the Ratio...
They scuttle.
They do, when the Ratio pokes up its head. I think that this coffee maker of mine, the Ratio 8, could probably hold up the sky.
Absolutely. Nice tie-in. I like that. So what can our listeners do to benefit from listening to these ads?
They need to go to ratiocoffee.com,
Okay.
RATIO coffee.com. They need to look at both the Ratio 6. It's a little more attainable than the Ratio 8, which is a more impressive machine. And they need to select the one they want with the accessory package they want, put it in their grocery cart or basket, and then enter the coupon code
ANCO,
which stands for Ad Nauseam Coffee, and they will get 15% off this marvelous machine.
It's a great deal. You won't regret it. And lastly, this episode brought to you by the Moss Method. Dave, tell us about what the Moss Method is.
The Moss Method for Greek is a program that I have developed which will enable anyone virtually to learn the Greek language. I've taken a 19th century text written by Charles Melville Moss, divided it up into 4 modules of approximately 40 lessons each. Now you may be thinking, I've always wanted to learn Greek, but I can't do it. It's too difficult. It's too expensive. I don't have anybody to help me. I think this is going to answer all of those questions and ease all of those concerns.
Excellent. So if students are interested, how would they go about doing this, accessing this?
Right. Well, they need to go to mossmethod.com. We're in the middle of redesigning our website. You have fabulous new redesign. They need to watch some of the sample videos. I try to give away a lot of material, a lot of Greek information there that you can have for free. But then if you want to go deeper, you want to have my help. You want to go from, being a person like I was 25, 30 years ago with no knowledge of Greek at all to a person like I am now. That is someone who can read and enjoy, the great prose and poetry of the ancient world. Then you need to get into this program.
And in this program, they'll have direct access to you, as I understand
Correct.
it. Yep.
Yes, it's self-paced, expert, and accessible. Those are the buzzwords, right? So I'm not going to just give you some book and say, hey, learn this on your own. I walk you through every word, every phrase, through instructional videos, and you have access to me via email, telephone, whatever you want. Cell, you can text me, ask any question. I get questions from people all over the world, actually. And of course, I don't have all the answers, but I work hard to try to answer their questions. I hold your hand. I take you through the process of learning Greek. You can succeed at this.
They can go from neophyte to erudite.
That's right. That's the slogan, Jeff. Thank you for remembering.
Excellent.
They need to go to mossmethod.com and check it out. As we get back into it, Jeff, it's time to move on to Book 6 and the story of Niobe and her children.
Yes. So Niobe is one of those stories that, again, falls into a particular type. And there's a lot of these stories where human being, mortal, is very good at something or is very proud of something, brags about that something, and runs afoul of a deity who is very often the god of that something.
Right. And so they have a certain amount of advantage in terms of being skillful. As when the premier example is Arachne.
Arachne, right? Which in the Metamorphoses is the story that immediately precedes this one, and so Ovid is stacking up these kinds of stories.
That's the tie. That's the connection.
Right.
So just like Arachne challenged Athena, here we have another person who was bold enough, who had enough hubris to go up against a divinity.
Right. And it's not one that, it also reminds me of the Marsyas story with Apollo, where it comes down to a contest. Arachne and Minerva have a weaving contest. Marsyas and Apollo have a throwdown, a musical contest. With Niobe, it's a boast. It's just an act of hubris that gets her into trouble, and she pays for it dearly.
Right, and a boast of something that happened in the past, right? It's not something that can be tested in the present.
Right. So that's the kind of the new spin on an old story.
Okay.
But let me start by reading some Latin.
You're going to read some Latin?
Yep,
Great.
I'll read a few lines from the beginning of this vignette.
And this is, can I ask which lines in the actual text of Ovid, in case, the Latini in our audience want to go check for themselves?
Sure. This is from Book 6, lines 146 to 151. Lydia tote fremit frigiaeque per opede facti, rumor et magnum sermonibus occupet orbem, ante suos Niobe dalmos cagnoverit illam, tum cum mai oniam virgo sipilumque collebat, nectamet admoni test poina popularis Arachnes, cedere cae litibus verbusque minoribus uti.
Very nicely done, Dr. Winkle.
Thank you.
Beautiful poetry, isn't it? So fluid.
Yes, very nice. Yes, it's great. It just rolls off the tongue.
It's incredible.
You want to share the translation? This is the Ambrose translation.
Yes, this is the Ambrose from the. It was the Focus Classical Library. So I don't know if the audience is interested, but another great publisher of classics was the Focus Company, and Hackett acquired them. I don't know, about a decade ago, and have kept alive these wonderful volumes. So here it goes. All Lydia is abuzz, and through all the Phrygian towns report of the deed proceeds, filling the wide world with talk. Before her marriage, Niobe had met that girl, when, as a young girl, she lived in Maeonia and Sipylus. But by the punishment of Arachne, her compatriot, she heeded not the warning to yield to heavenly beings and to employ modest speech.
So we already know where this one is going.
Right.
It's not going to end well, right? But I love this detail that Niobe met Arachne, knew that story, and so in some ways Ovid is saying that no excuse.
Right. She had every reason to understand this was not going to be a good outcome for her if she fronted the gods.
Right. So as we learn in the story, so she knows what happened to Arachne, doesn't learn her lesson. We also learn that Niobe is originally from Lydia, Phrygia era, what we would call the west coast of Turkey today. And I maybe wonder if that was significant. Often the Greeks, I guess the Romans too, would associate the East as being kind of wild and uncontrolled.
Well, Dionysus was from Phrygia, right?
Right, exactly. But Eastern dress, Eastern ways was thought to be decadent.
Yeah, luxuriant.
Right. So I wonder if that's part of the hook here. We can kind of blame Niobe for.
Well, if I may, it's the Phrygia is kind of like the ad nauseum green room, right?
The ad nauseum green room?
Yeah, you haven't been in the green room?
I haven't. I've never been let in. What
maybe
goes
I
on?
should have told you about
what
it.
goes on in there?
Well, I can fill you in next week if that's all right, Winkle.
That's fine.
On the green room?
That's fine. Right. It's going to bug me, but
Okay.
I can let it go for now.
Maybe I can come up with a VIP pass.
Oh, sounds good.
All right.
So she's from Lydia. She's an Easterner, but we also learned that through marriage, she's now moved to Thebes. I think that also kind of carries a particular weight to it. That reminds me of kind of all the horrible things that happened with
A lot of horrible things.
with Oedipus's family, right? And so, and she's also her background. She's related to Tantalus, and so there's a lot of things that kind of presage nightmares to come for this woman.
Related to Tantalus. That's an interesting detail. That detail kind of sparks my curiosity.
Is it? Would you say almost?
Don't even do that. Don't even do that, Winkle. That's so bad.
Sorry. Can we just let that go?
Go on.
All right. Okay. So in the story, we learn the prophetess Manto, who is a daughter of Tiresias, another great prophetess. She calls the people together. It's for a celebration of the goddess Latona, Leto in Greek, the mother of Apollo and Diana, the famous twins. And so the throng is gathered. Everybody is kind of following the directions of the prophetess, but Niobe is not having any of it, and she lashes out with kind of the major part of her hubris, I would say here. So let me go to the Ambrose translation. Behold, Niobe arrives, attended by a great throng of followers, outstanding in her Phrygian robes woven with gold. As much as anger allows her to be, she is lovely, and moves her decorous head and the tresses that over either shoulder spilled. She stopped, and as she moved, her proud gaze all about exclaims, "What madness is this? To prefer to those seen divinities ones you've only heard about? Why do altars Latona revere when my divinity lacks incense yet? Of Tantalus I was born, the only one who had permission to touch the tables of the gods. The sister of the Pleiades is my mother, and Atlas, greatest in size, my grandfather, who bears upon his neck the pole of the sky. My other grandfather is Jupiter, in whom, as my father-in-law, I glory as well."
Can we interrupt for just a moment?
Please.
A lot of intertextuality here, right?
Yeah. Talk about it.
Well, she is reminding us of Book 4 and what just happened to Atlas. And here's her resume of all the famous people she knows, much as Perseus, when he arrived at Atlas, said, "If divinity is your thing, I'm divine. If great accomplishments, I have those too."
Yes. Could anything be more hubristic than this? She's saying,
I doubt it.
She said, "Why are you worshiping this goddess when I'm right here?"
Exactly.
Right. "The Phrygian peoples fear me, and under my sway is Cadmus's kingdom, and the walls committed to the lyre of my spouse, as well as their people, are ruled by my husband and me. No matter to what part of the house I turn my eyes, our riches seen beyond measure. To this is added the fact that I have a face worthy of a goddess, and to this 7 daughters add, and just as many sons, and soon both sons and daughters-in-law. Now ask yourselves whether our pride is justified, and dare to prefer to me, the Titan girl born of some Coeus, I don't know, Latona, that one to whom all the world one time refused the slightest space for her to give birth."
So, Niobe is the wife of Amphion. And Amphion and Zethus are the sons of Zeus. So she's married to a guy who's descended from Zeus, the son of Zeus, right?
Right.
And she has divinity on her side too. So she says, "Look, this is absurd. You're going to worship Apollo and Artemis or Diana. I'm right here. I'm divine, and I need some respect."
Right. The line that I ended there with says, "Latona, that one to whom all the world one time refused the slightest space for her to give birth." So it's another kind of insult. So it's worth kind of recounting that story quickly. Right. So
Zeus and Leto, right?
Latona, they have an affair. She becomes pregnant, and Hera or Juno.
Yep. Intervenes with a kind of persecution.
Right. And tells her and says, kind of pronounces a curse that she will not be allowed to give birth on any terra firma.
Right.
So any place in the mainland or any fixed island.
Hunts and chases and persecutes her all over the globe, basically.
Right. And in some versions I've read, she's in perpetual labor. So it's not that nobody will take her in. She's in excruciating pain this whole time. But
Comes to the region of the Phrygians and transforms them into frogs.
Oh, that's right.
Leto does.
Right.
Another story recounted by Ovid.
Right.
Because they don't give her a welcome reception.
Exactly. Until the island of Delos is sent up by Neptune, and the island is a floating island, and so it finds a loophole in the curse of Juno. So it's not the mainland, it's not a fixed island, it's a floating island, and so it becomes the one place that can take her in. She gives birth to the twins there, and then that place becomes a holy sanctuary for her and for her children.
May I digress for a moment?
Please do.
Something I learned recently is that the inhabitants of the island of Delos were famous for their ability to swim.
Is that right?
Yes. Now, the Greeks generally didn't swim.
No.
Because you don't go out onto the sea unless you have to. It's too dangerous.
Right.
The sea is for warfare and commerce, and that's it. It's not for recreation.
Yeah, and even when they would go out on ships, they would rarely leave the side of land.
Yes, they were very afraid of the sea. No floaties, no pool noodles, things like that. But the inhabitants of Delos were an exception. And so in Latin, to say that someone is really good at something, they're a Delius natator, a Delian swimmer.
Is that right?
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, I do too. So if you're really good at something, you're a Delius natator.
Oh, man, I got to work that into my everyday speech.
I've started using it.
Yeah?
Yep.
How's it gone over?
Not great.
Not great. It takes time to work these things in.
Of course.
Right. So in that, we learn that she's a daughter of Tantalus, right, which she brags about here. But of course, Tantalus too.
Bad ending to that story.
Right. So he
was admitted to the table of the gods, but he took his own son Pelops and carved him up and fed him to the gods.
Right, to test their omniscience.
Right.
Right. And it doesn't end well for him.
No, he ends up in one of the lower regions of Tartarus being punished.
So I think all of these things, kind of where she's from, where she ends up, who she's related to, is all a clear, obvious foreshadowing that she's just going to join another the ranks of the infamous here.
Yes, disaster awaits.
Right.
Shall I read on from there?
Please do.
Okay. She continues, your goddess was received by neither sky nor water nor land, an exile from the world, until Delos pitied the wanderer and said, you wander as a guest upon the land, I upon the sea, and granted her unstable space. She became the mother of two, only a seventh of what my womb has produced. A little hubristic division there, arithmetic. Mm-hmm. Would any deny that I am happy, and who would also deny that happy I shall remain? Plenty has made me secure. Too great am I for fortune to do me harm, and should she take away much, much will I retain. My wealth has dispelled all worry. Imagine that I could be deprived of just a part of this tribe of children I have. Even then I would not be reduced to the level of only two, Latona's crowd, of which how far is she from being bereft? Abandon the rites at once, you've done enough, and remove the laurel from your hair. They take it off, and leave the rites undone, but as they can, venerate with silent murmurs the goddess's might.
So she's so intimidating that the people cower.
Yes, they do.
Right.
They don't really believe, but like you say, they cower. They pretend to say, okay, Niobe, your claims are superior. We'll give in.
I love this detail as they're walking away, they're kind of muttering prayers.
Yes. So the boast is, I've got 14 children. You've only got 2.
You got 2. I'm 7 times the mother you are.
Yes, what kind of a mother are you?
Right. So, of course, Latona is deeply angered by this, and she calls a council of herself and her children on Delos, and basically says, what are we going to do about this? And she kind of goes into this long complaint, and Apollo interrupts his own mother and says, okay, I've heard enough. Let's go get this woman. Let's deliver punishment now. Right.
Apollo's a touchy one, isn't he?
He is. Well, he's kind of one of those weird, those odd personalities, and there's so much about him that's very close to humanity. Mm-hmm. He's associated with poetry and music and
reason. He's the god of reason.
Right.
Dispassionate consideration.
These things that separate human beings from the animals, right? But at the same time, he can be coldly cruel and
calculating
and just snap at the drop of a hat. Mm-hmm. That's the Apollo. That's the Phoebus we see here.
Right.
All right, I'll pick up the story there. So the twins come down to Thebes. Ambrose translation. A broad and level field lay open before the walls that horses had constantly beaten down, where many wheels and rigid hooves had softened the clods beneath. Of Amphion's 7 sons, some are mounting there, strong steeds, and pressing those backs made red with Tyrian dye and holding the reins heavy with gold. Of these Ismenus, who was the first to burden his mother's womb, while bending the course of his steed into a fixed curve and checking its foaming mouth, exclaims, "Ah, me! and there, implanted in the middle of his chest, he bears a dart. And with the reins falling from his dying grasp, he sinks down gradually from the horse's right shoulder to his side.
Oh.
So, first one down.
Yes. Arrow, just as he's plowing.
Right. Out of nowhere, right? Unseen. They don't see the archer. Having heard the sound of the quiver through the empty air, Sipylus next was giving his horse full rein, and when the captain, suspecting a storm from the appearance of clouds, extends the sails that hang on every side lest the slightest breeze escape.
Epic simile.
Epic simile.
Right.
The unavoidable arrow finds him even giving full rein. The quivering shaft is fixed at the top of his neck. The naked iron protrudes from his throat. Reminds me of the slaughter of the suitors.
Absolutely.
At the end of the Odyssey, right?
Well, there are a number of slaughter scenes in Ovid, and each time they get more graphic and more extended and a little comic, honestly.
It goes so over the top, it's almost ridiculous.
In the Battle of the Lapiths and the Centaurs, which of course we'll cover at some point, the centaurs are clocking each other over the head with any kind of stray item they can find in the great banquet hall, like a large bowl of Jell-O, or another occasion they pull the leg off a table and it loses some of its epic grandeur,
right? Because
it's ridiculous.
And you think Ovid is kind of having a laugh again?
Absolutely. I don't know if he's doing it here. We'll have to see how it plays out. Is he going to go from the tragic to the absurd?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, it reads to me very much like I said, the suitor scene or a battle scene from the Iliad and the like. Well, let's see where he goes with this. Bent forward as he was, he topples over the mane and unchecked limbs and stains the soil with steamy blood.
Yeah, that was Sipylus, right?
That was Sipylus.
So who's next?
Oh, unfortunate Phaedimus and Tantalus, of his grandfather's name, the heir, having finished their usual tasks, had gone on to gleaming wrestling, that work of youths. Already in tight embrace, had they pressed struggling chest to struggling chest, when sped by taut stretched bow, the arrow pierced them both, joined just as they were. So with one shot.
Yeah.
Okay, it's getting a little ridiculous.
Yes, I think that's meant to be a little bit comic as it's tragic. Right. No sooner, may I pick up here?
Yeah, please do.
No sooner had they groaned than they laid upon the ground, their limbs doubled over in pain, and prostrate turned aloft their final gaze and breathed out their last. Alphenor looks on, this is another brother, and beating his grief-torn breast, runs forward, and as he lifts the chill limbs in his embrace, hugging his brothers as in an act of kindness, collapses in his act of piety. For the Delian god broke the inner bonds of his heart with his prophetic shaft of steel. As soon as it was removed, the point tore away a part of his lung, and his soul and blood spewed forth into the air. It's getting grisly.
It's like a Tarantino movie here.
I guess.
Yes.
But unshorn Damasichthon was dealt not just one wound. Precisely where the leg begins and ligaments of the knee form a spongy connection was he struck.
That's very specific.
Well, it's a little bit anatomical.
It is. We continue. And as he tries with his hand to extract the lethal shaft, another arrow is driven up to its feathers into his throat. His blood pushed it on through, and welling up, springs forth with a leap, drilling a steam through the air. The last, Ilioneus, had raised his arms in prayer to no avail, and had said, "O gods, one and all," not knowing that he need not pray to all, "have mercy." The wielder of the bow was moved, but only after the arrow could no longer be recalled. He fell just the same to his death despite the minor wound, his heart not deeply pierced by the shaft.
Carnage.
It's a nice little, I like that little detail there that Apollo almost feels a little sorry at the end, but it's too late, he's already shot the guy.
Right.
Right.
You think as the god of prophecy he would have been able to foresee that?
but no.
Nope.
No,
Took him by surprise.
He's in kill mode. Yep. All right, so 7 sons down. Mm-hmm. That means she's got 7 daughters left.
And then they start in on the daughters.
So Niobe, she's devastated, but she's still defiant to the last.
But then her husband, Amphion, descendant of Zeus, takes on a more stereotypical feminine role that we see in tragedy and takes his own life.
He does.
From grief.
Right, he commits suicide. It's, again, the scene kind of reminds me of Jocasta.
Right.
Hanging herself. And
Oedipus Rex.
Yes, and Eurydice in Antigone. It's usually the feminine character who goes off to commit suicide. But here, again, it's another Ovid curveball. Mm-hmm. Here, the husband kills himself, and Niobe is left to deal with the fallout.
That's right. So then she's mourning the death of her sons, and we pick up again here. She falls, she being Niobe, falls upon the cold members and frantically implants her final kisses upon all her sons, from whom she raises to heaven the arms she has bruised, and says, "Cruel Latona, feed upon our grief, yes, feed." And added, "Upon my sorrow glut your breast and glut your savage heart. Through 7 deaths have I been carried to my tomb. Exult and triumph as my victorious foe. But why victorious? Wretched though I am, I still have more than you in your happiness. Even after so many deaths, I win.
Can you believe this?
I can't believe it. This is some stubborn arrogance.
It is. Again, to bring up the Odyssey, it reminds me of Odysseus again shaking his fist at the Cyclops, telling him his name and his father's name. Right? He can't leave it alone. She can't leave it alone. It's like, I still have 7 daughters left, so I still have way more children than you do, Latona. But what does she think is going to happen here?
Well, there's this famous line in the Amores, and I'm paraphrasing. I'm not going to get it exactly right. But Ovid says something like, Video et probo meliora, I see and approve the better things, but I follow sequor, I follow the worse. Right?
Yeah.
This is Niobe.
Yeah,
right?
she can't help herself.
She can't. She knows this is stupid.
Right.
And it's going to lead to her death. But
right. I guess maybe she knows that this was going to happen anyway, and so she's going to get one last insult in.
Perhaps.
Go down swinging.
Correct.
At least verbally. Mm-hmm. Right. So Apollo and Diana come down and
do their worst.
They do their worst, and they take out all 7 daughters. I mean, Niobe.
Not all 7.
She begs for the life of the last one.
Right. This is an important exception.
Okay.
Can you read us that part there?
I can. When 6 had been sent to death and suffered wounds, the last one remained, whom her mother, with all her form, with all her robes concealed. Leave one, the smallest of all. Of all the many, I demand the smallest, she cried, and only one. And as she pleads, the one she pleads for falls. Niobe sits down bereft among her lifeless sons and daughters and spouse, and stiffens in her woes. Her tresses are not moved by the breeze. A bloodless color lies upon her face. Within her sad cheeks her eyes stare motionless. Upon her form there is nothing alive. Her tongue itself within her hardened mouth is frozen, and her veins are no longer able to be moved. Her neck cannot be bent. Her arms cannot be moved. Her foot cannot advance. Her innards are also stone. And yet she weeps, and enveloped within a whirl of a strong wind, she's carried off to her homeland. There, fixed upon a mountain peak, she wastes away, and turned to marble, flows even now with tears. Aren't those powerful lines?
They are.
I mean, as in many ways, as wretched a character as Niobe is, I think what Ovid nails is kind of that coldness, that pain,
sorrow.
of sorrow and pain of losing one's children, and particularly she's just completely she becomes, of course, literally petrified, but she has the being of stone.
I think that's very well said. Something else that I like about Ovid, I know 2 episodes ago when we first touched on the Metamorphoses, I said words to the effect echoing Conte that if you want something profound, you read Virgil. If you want to have a good time, be amused, entertained, diverted, you read Ovid. I think this is an instance where Ovid reaches a kind of sublimity.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'd put it like this. He is a person who can provoke within us pity for the people who don't deserve it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a perfect example of that, right? And it's another one of those places where he's kind of jerking the audience, from left to right.
What's going to happen?
Right. So he's such a surprising poet, right? And we were just reading those almost ridiculous death scenes. Again, you could be lured into thinking, okay, what kind of horrible death is Niobe going to receive? And he kind of slows it down with this really deeply human portrait of grief.
Yes, carried off to her homeland, so she's returned to Phrygia, where she becomes a famous marble outcropping and flowing like marble with tears.
Yes, so this is often associated with the so-called Mount Sipylus in Lydia. Again, it bears the name of one of her children, the so-called Weeping Rock. And it's a mountain it looks like it has the head of a woman at the top of it. And so you can easily imagine even the sight of this mountain kind of giving rise to a story like this.
Or vice versa.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe it's really her.
It could be, yes, right? So
Are you so quick to disbelieve?
I can't go that far.
Okay.
Right? All right, but a surprising bit of charity on your part.
To whom?
You're usually the deep cynic.
What?
Yeah.
Charity toward whom?
Wait, charitable towards that kind of very romantic interpretation.
No, I believe the stories.
Oh, you do?
I think most of them are true, honestly.
Okay.
Haven't we covered this before?
We have. All right. I'm having this extreme deja vu right now. Right.
That's okay. So what's the connection to Harry Houdini?
This was new to me. I learned this in just doing a little bit of research on this. So Harry Houdini's grave I believe he's buried somewhere in New York. Hairdo, the stage name of Eric Weiss.
Oh, really?
Yes,
I used to know that name, but it escaped me.
Nicely done.
Did you get that?
I did.
Escaped.
I like it. I like it. He has a weeping Niobe on his grave. And as I understand, this is part of a long tradition of statues and paintings of Niobe as kind of a stand-in for extreme grief.
I didn't know that.
Right. So usually she's portrayed apart from her lost children, but the weeping Niobe becomes kind of a symbol of kind of recognizing and accepting the pain of death.
There's no way to escape it.
No. Right. And so it was part of Houdini's grave, still is. Yeah.
Have you been to that site?
I have not. No.
It sounds like the sort of thing that you would do.
It would, yes. I read a biography on Houdini a few years back. It was fascinating.
Do you remember the title, or does it escape you?
Here we go. I gotta stop falling into that trap. But a fascinating individual. I would love to see Houdini's grave. Yeah, and now especially that I know that there's a Niobe there. So Niobe becomes this kind of archetype for the bereft parent. There are comparisons to Niobe in the Iliad when Priam loses Hector. He's described along the lines of mourning like Niobe. Antigone compares herself to Niobe when she's at the end of things.
The Sophoclean play, right?
Yes, right. When she's about to take her own life.
In the Theban saga.
Right. So she becomes kind of the stand-in for kind of ultimate suffering and sorrow.
So this is a part of a number of stories, right? It's a sample of a number of stories that show the vengeance of Artemis.
Right.
Would you say? I mean, we've got stories like the defense of her virginity, where Actaeon, the story we saw before, Actaeon gets punished when Artemis is, espied inappropriately while she's bathing.
Yep.
There's Orion, there's Cypriotes, who also stumbles across Diana while bathing, or Artemis while bathing. What do you make of this?
Artemis, she plays that role like her brother. She can be, very quick for vengeance. And so, Apollo, in this instance, he's defending the honor of his mother. Artemis is doing the same kind of thing. But I think even more so than her brother, Artemis, being a virginal goddess herself, she recognizes that's kind of the core of her sanctity and holiness. And so she is very quick to defend that and to strike down those that threaten it, even in the slightest fashion, or even on the behalf of other feminine goddesses to defend their virginity as well. She'll whip out the arrows and defend that. So again, a very dangerous, vengeful deity. This is another one of examples of that.
Right. So one of my favorite rooms in the Uffizi Museum in Florence, is the Nyobid Room. Right. So this is on the second floor. I'm sure you can picture it in your mind. It was closed the last time I was there, sadly.
Oh, man.
But I wanted to read a little bit about this portion of the neoclassical room in the Uffizi. So I'm reading from virtualuffizi.com, right? So the Uffizi houses a group of 12 ancient sculptures, Roman copies from an original Greek. So these were originally sculpted, in bronze. Now the Romans copied them in marble, of which we know neither the date nor the location. Now they're Hellenistic, which means sometime after Alexander, but before the Roman era. The sculptures that give name to the great Niobe's room at the second floor of the gallery were found in Rome near the Porta San Giovanni in 1583. The Cardinal Ferdinando de' Medici, the future Grand Duke of Tuscany, bought her immediately. That is the Nyobid sculpture set for its Roman villa. Around 1770, the sculptures were brought to Florence. In 1780, at the peak of neoclassical period, the room where they are still exposed was set up by the architect Gaspare Maria Paletti. The statues are lined up along the walls, spaced apart to allow visitors to admire them in isolation, which sacrifices part of the relationship between the various works. But I find it, now I'm not quoting here, I'm just commenting, I find it a really compelling room. It's beautiful. It has this marble floor. It's got gorgeous late Renaissance or early modern period, if I'm not mistaken, furniture and different kinds of accoutrements.
Yeah.
And then scattered around the room, spaced around the room, are as many of these Nyobid sculptures as survive.
Right.
It's very, very moving. It's very beautifully done. The 12 sculptures represent characters fleeing or shot dead in a dramatic and theatrical way. The focus of the group is Niobe, who tries to protect her youngest daughter and directs her terrified and pleading gaze skyward. So she's looking up, and the child is huddling at her knees, crouching at her knees, her back partly exposed, her clothing partly exposed from her back, and she's looking back in terror, waiting for that shaft to come.
Yeah.
Niobe is glancing up, pleading for help.
Yeah, it strikes me that there's a number of artistic renderings of this story, and none of them that I've come across emphasize her hubris at all.
No,
it's all the pity. It's all pity. It's all very sympathetic to a mother losing her children,
missing out on the entire reason why she was dealt this way. Right?
Exactly. I mean, it doesn't tell the whole story.
Is that a testimony to Ovid's success in moving us to pity for her?
I think so, but it also leads me to appreciate Ovid even more because with his poetry he can tell the whole story, and it becomes way more complicated, right? Than it's
and as we've established, that's the job of academics, right?
To find things to see things that aren't there.
Yes, to complicate things,
right? And Ovid's very good at that.
He is.
Right?
He's great.
So to focus just on the suffering of Niobe, it makes for a very moving visual sculpture, but it only really tells half the story.
Right.
So I prefer Ovid.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jeff, we got to get out of here.
We do.
Yeah. Someone wants to use the Vomitorium.
They do tonight already?
Yeah, they want to rent it.
Who is this?
It's the NGA.
NGA.
The National Granola Association.
They're going to use the Vomitorium?
They have a meeting. It's their annual meeting.
They're just going to talk about granola, or they're going to brew up a batch?
I don't think you brew granola. I think you bake it.
Yeah, that shows how little I know.
Yeah. There's a large subject. Chop it up into little bits and stuff it into foil wrappers. It's a complicated business. Long recipes.
Okay.
The NGA called me up this week and said, hey, we want to use your space for our future granola plans.
And you said, that sounds great.
That's it. That's a date. Let's do it.
Okay. Sounds good.
So we got to get out of here. We got to thank a number of people.
Yep. We got to thank Ken Tamplin and Scott Vincent for the great music you hear throughout the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We got to thank Mishka, our engineer who makes us sound better than we are.
Right.
We've got to remind people to contact us.
Yes. I got a great email today from a fan in Germany, and he's going to get a shout out pretty soon. So
excellent.
People all over the world.
We're going international again.
Yeah.
This is great.
It's amazing, Dr. Winkle.
Yep.
We started this, if I can, wax nostalgic.
Please do.
Nostalgia ain't what it used to be, of course, but we started this little podcast a year ago with, not much ambition, not much talent, and it's taken a hold a little bit.
Yeah, we're reaching people.
We are,
That's
right.
Great.
What's the phrase you like to use?
They're catching on and catching up.
Correct.
Yep. So please contact us. You can write to me at jeff@adnauseum.com. Don't forget the V. Or you can contact Dave at adnauseum.com. Again, don't forget the V. We love your suggestions. Tell us a little about yourself if you want a shout out.
We've got some great fan art. People are sending us fan art.
It's great.
it's
so entertaining.
You know who you are out there. We're very amused.
We
Thank
love it. We love it. And next week is to be determined.
Yeah, TBD.
Yep.
So we decided we're not going to do another set of Ovidian vignettes. We're going to space those out a little bit, but we're going to think about it, right?
Yep.
Try to bring a quality product to the audience.
Going to keep you kind of on your toes, like I think like Ovid would want. Yeah.
We are going to be giving away the Lombardo translation. We have 2 copies, Compliments of Hackett, and the Ambrose translation. We have 2 copies of that as well. So stay tuned to our social media channels so that you can tag your friends and so forth and get in the drawing for one of these great volumes so that when we cover the stories, you can read along.
Excellent. And Dave, you have our gustatory parting shot.
I do. This one comes from a Mr. Robert Black, and he says, I got to say, before I read it, Ovid would go along with this, I think.
Yeah.
Because it has a kind of a somber, sad tone a little bit.
Okay.
Robert Black says, quote, when you realize you cannot eat or drink money, the pursuit of it becomes senseless. Ooh. That's a cool note to end on.
It is. But thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.